I like playing the Caro-Kann opening as black, but for a while I didn't know what to play against it as white. But I learned a really nice variation against it, which is pretty solid, and it also has some nice little tricks and traps that your opponent can actually fall into, and they actually do fall into it surprisingly often in my experience. But the nice thing is it's a solid opening, so even if your opponent doesn't fall into any of the traps or anything, then you still have a good position and you have a good game. So let's dive in and have a look. So of course we start with e4 and black plays the Caro-Kann, and then instead of playing the typical d4, I play knight c3, and then after d5, I play knight f3. And this is called the two knights variation of the Caro-Kann. And this is what I love to play against it. And there are a few things that black can do at this point. Probably the best move, or in my opinion, the best move, the one that I like to play and I like to recommend, is bishop g4. And then at this point, like, I'm not going to actually dig into this variation. At this point, like, you still have a good position. You can play h3 if you want. You can play bishop e2. And if the knight comes out, you can consider playing something like e5 and d4 to kind of get kind of an advanced Caro-Kann kind of setup. And that tends to work pretty well. The other thing that black can do is just play knight f6 right away. And in this case, I definitely recommend playing e5. And then there's a line where black plays knight e4, d4, takes, and now things look pretty good for white, in my opinion. Like, yes, you have doubled pawns, but you can bring this bishop to d3, you can castle, and you have this nice semi-open b file that you can use, and, things are looking pretty good. If you play the Vienna opening like I do, then this might look kind of familiar, having this sort of dark squared pawn chain going up toward the king side, and it can work pretty well. You might even consider pushing the f pawn at some point later on. But the move that I really want to talk about, let's go back to here. Yes, to here. The move that I really like to talk about is this line. So after black captures here and we recapture with the knight, it is just so tempting for black to play bishop f5, because this is a very thematic move in the Caro-Kann. This is often where you want your bishop to be anyway. And it appears that you get it with a tempo, right? A tempo on this knight. But I love it when people play this line, because often, I've labeled this as a mistake, and it's not actually a mistake, but often when I play my next move, they don't know how to respond to it properly. And so what I like to play is knight g3. So I'm hitting this bishop right away, and often what black will do is play the bishop back to g6, and then we're going to go after the bishop again with h4. And so we're threatening to play h5 and get the bishop trapped. And the simplest way out of this, almost the only way out of it, to be honest, is to play h6. But then after h6, we're going to continue attacking that bishop with this knight. And usually black doesn't really want you to be able to take the bishop, and the whole point of pushing h6 was to give the bishop an escape square. So most of the time, that's what black will do, is put the bishop back here. Now, a better move, I think, is queen d6 instead. And what happens here is usually we'll take the bishop anyway, the queen will move over here, and we have a game. But the thing is, in this position, like, look at the development. So we're ready to push d4, and then both bishops have easy lines of development. Our knight is out. We're getting ready to castle pretty soon, and black hasn't developed anything. Like, all they have out is the queen. And so this position is actually pretty nice for white if black plays this queen d6 move. But often black will tuck this bishop back to h7, and this is where things get really fun. Now what we do is we play queen h5, and so we're threatening checkmate right away, right? And the most common response here is g6. I've also seen, I believe it's queen d5 that can happen here as well. Let me just pull up the database to make sure I'm not telling you anything inaccurate. Yeah, the nice thing about queen d5 is that then you can just bring your bishop out, defended by this knight, the knight's defended by the queen, and then you're still piling up a whole lot of pressure on that f-pawn. So queen to d5 doesn't really work out. But instead, something like g6. And then, this is fun, we play bishop c4 anyway. And you may know this pattern already, but if they take the queen, then we simply deliver checkmate on f7, which is pretty great. I've never actually, well, I was going to say I've never actually gotten this in a game. I may have gotten this in like a blitz or a bullet game before. Usually in slower games, your opponent will figure out what you're trying to do. So Yeah, so that's what we do. And then it's not easy for black to kind of get out of this. A decent move for black here is just to play e6, and now black is threatening the queen again because we don't have our checkmate pattern that we had before. And it looks kind of tempting to bring the queen back to f6, but actually it's really nice to bring the queen back to e2 because we have some more tricks up our sleeves in this position. So first of all, something like bishop g7 looks like a pretty natural move, but then what we can do here is we can actually sacrifice the knight on f7 because this is forking the queen and rook, and the king can't take because then the queen comes in here backed up by the bishop, and this is checkmate, right? So bishop g7 really doesn't work. And similarly, knight f6 doesn't really work because we do actually the exact same thing. Sacrifice the knight, bring in the queen, and now this is checkmate as well. So it's a little bit tricky for black to know what to do in this position, and the best move, or one of the best moves, is something like queen e7, which is protecting against this knight sacrifice. And again, at this point, we just continue on with the game. But again, look at the position. White is very well developed. The only piece that black has developed technically is this bishop, and it's trapped behind a pawn. We're going to castle, we're going to push this pawn, we're going to get the bishop out, and we're going to be feeling pretty good as white. Black is not feeling very good. Let's see. This position is plus 1.6 according to the engine. So white is doing really well here. And I actually have gotten a position like this in a couple of tournament games, believe it or not, a couple of classical games. I don't know if it got sort of all the way to this point, but certainly it got to here in at least one game that I was playing in a tournament, and I had a very, very pleasant position. This bishop was trapped for most of the game, and the game went really well for me. I have a couple other little notes that I wanted to mention. First of all, after this h4 push, instead of playing h6, black could instead play h5, but it's actually no better because we just bring the knight anyway, and then once the bishop goes back, now we're just taking that pawn, and it, like when I was thinking about it earlier, it's like, wait, but h5, that means that the rook is opened up, but it doesn't matter because the bishop just blocks it in. So h5 doesn't work either. Also, if we go all the way back here, what if instead of bishop f5, black plays bishop g4 at this stage? Well, that is okay and probably a better option than f5, to be honest, but it can actually transpose into the same position. So what we do is we attack the bishop, and then black does have the option of trading here, and that's fine. If they do that, we play on at that point from that position. But if black decides to back off, now we can bring our knight down to g3 and attack the bishop again. Once again, this is black's last chance actually to just trade off the bishop for the knight and continue the game from here. But if they put the bishop back up here on g6, then we play h4 and we've transposed to the same position. So that's kind of a little line worth knowing. And then finally, if I go back to this position, so instead of playing bishop f5 or bishop g4, there's another interesting line where black can actually play knight f6 instead. And this is kind of a fun one too, because what we want to do is, black is developing and threatening, has a tempo on the knight. We could capture here, but then like as black, I really kind of like it when this knight gets captured by a knight, because then I take with this pawn and we go into a position similar to the Tartakower or maybe exactly the Tartakower position, which I'm pretty sure I've made another video on that. I'll link to it up there or up on that side, I guess, if I've done that. But anyway, it's just a nice position for black. The bishops can get out really quickly, and there are some pretty interesting lines there. So I don't like to take with the knight. Instead, I like to play queen e2. And first of all, there's a really silly move that black could make, which is to move the other knight here, knight b to d7, and that doesn't work because now knight d6 is checkmate because this pawn is pinned by the queen, and that is kind of nice. I'm pretty sure I've gotten this like once or twice in a blitz game. But instead of that, what black will often do is actually capture on e4, and then the queen captures here, and then if black tries to bring this knight over with a tempo on the queen eventually, then it's kind of nice for white as well. We can just develop out the bishop, and then actually once the queen is hit, we can delay moving the queen for one move by bringing the knight to e5, because now if black captures the queen, then we have this checkmate pattern once again. And so black will have to do something like e6 first, and then we just move the queen back. and now we just play on. We're going to push this pawn. We're going to develop the bishop. We're going to castle one way or the other. We're feeling pretty good. We're well developed, and things are looking good for white. And that's about it. So again, that is the 2 knights variation against the Caro-Kann, which starts right here. And it's a pretty nice way to play against the Caro-Kann, in my opinion. You don't need to necessarily know a lot of theory, but it helps to know a few of these kind of trappy lines that people do tend to fall into surprisingly often. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have a favorite line to play against the Caro-Kann, leave that down in a comment. I'd love to hear about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.